Hey, happy fall, y'all, and welcome to the Denver and Rio Grande Western Iron Horse Route.
Stick around for today's video, which is coming up next.
Good morning, everybody. This is Brian. How are you? I am pleased to announce the completion of my modular open helix. And I'm going to sit here and talk you through the completion of levels 3, the end of level 3, 4, and 5. It's going to include the installation of a turnout on level 5, a right-hand number 6 Pico. In this episode, I'm actually going to show you the entire process. I show you how I lay the support, I show you how I insert the beams, I show you how I lay the cork, I show you how I solder the flex, I show you how I lay the flex, I show you how I secure the flex to the track. For the most part, the helix is done and looking well. Now right here I had a problem. And what I did was I was very careful. I measured a lot, and I laid the support wrong, and that's a ½ inch in at least. And so what I did was I stopped, I went back, and I used the jigsaw, and I cut the support, and I put it back in correctly. A ½ inch deviance of the plan I found would cause nightmares. And so I did have to stick very closely to the specifications that my friends and I set out for the helix. We laid the supports. Finishing, this is coming around the other side of the turnout and getting into level 4 right here. Level 4 actually begins right there, and we'll come on around one more time before we hit the right-hand Pico turnout. I use these little tacks because the Pico flex track does not have the little holes in the ties, pre-drilled holes in the ties like the Atlas track does. And I do have a tiny bit and could have drilled holes in the ties myself, but I found that those little thumbtacks worked really well to secure the track properly exactly where I wanted it, as well as the fact that they really made it easy to run that bead of glue down the middle to secure it because there was nothing on the track at all. That prevented me from getting glue up on the rails that I had to clean off. Basically, it left the track free from obstruction to secure it down to the cork. And so basically, I lay the support, I insert the beams, I lay the cork down, which I'm going to show you all that in a sec. And yes, that was my man RC Rick. He did a quick inspection before he left. That was after our interview the other day. RC Rick won't be in this interview. Other than that shot, this episode, excuse me, is about business. And as you see here, I got a quick time lapse going, just showing you how I insert the beams. That's how I made sure I cut those blocks specifically. For the right distance, and so that kept me, I could inch that all the way around, all the way up. I had about 5 of those, and as long as I put them in the right place, they gave me a consistent grade all the way around. And so I used clips there on the edges. I just cut another piece of hardboard exactly just a little bit thinner to match, and then used wood glue and those clips right there. Those are just clips you can be found at Office Depot or Walmart, and they held the bottom piece of hardboard to either side while the wood glue dried. And here we go. I am adding flex, soldering right there, nothing to it. The fact that I could do all the soldering and all the track laying and all the cork laying for the most part that I wanted to in a very accessible way, because I was able to pick this Helix up and spin it. And as a result, I had a good angle for my soldering. I had a good angle when I was laying cork. I had a good angle when I was laying the flex. And so things weren't awkward. And had I built this in the layout, I would have had a lot of problems. I would not have been able to do this on the layout because I'm able to pick this up and spin it around. And that gives me access to the areas that I'm working on, which is of the utmost importance. All the track laying issues, or the majority of them I had, other than just inexperience when I worked on the previous Helix in the layout, was the awkward situations that I'd get in over there against the wall where I was leaning over the layout and I couldn't properly get in there to do the soldering or to ensure the track was level and right due to the awkward angles and stuff. So basically, this is just a process. I'd set the beams in like so and then screw them down. I kept the holes really tight. I only drilled the holes big enough to barely fit the skewers or the beams. I had to actually twist them down, holding the hardboard each time, and that helped to make them secure as well. Then I use a mixture. This is just PVA on it right now. I came back over them at the end with a mixture of PVA and Glue Max. And this is just a cheap caulk, and I actually put more than I wanted to here, but that's really okay. I take all the excess off. I use like a popsicle stick, and I cut the rounded part off so it's flush, and then it's almost like a paintbrush, and I can just paint that caulk to a very thin layer, and I spread it where it's thin and consistent throughout. I don't want I cut the cork in 1/2-inch strips because they'll bend really well there, and I want to make sure that the caulk is not so thick that it'll come up between the cork, because that can cause problems with the track. So it's just a very thin layer of caulk down there, and then what I do is I take the 1/2-inch strips of cork. They're 2 feet long and a 1/2 inch wide, and then I lay the outside piece first, and it just sticks right to that caulk. I mean, it really does, and it lays great. As long as I've got the good angle like that where I can get to it like I want to, the cork lays really well on this caulk. It adheres easy. It doesn't even require pins. What I do though is where the joints meet in the cork, I make sure that I put some kind of object, usually the glue container, on top of that, just to make sure that it doesn't peel up at all during the drying process and stays flat. A bump in that cork can cause a bump in that track, and that can cause problems. One of the reasons why I consistently, every time I added a piece of flex, I started with the locos, added a car, and I kept going until I ran out of cars, and I made sure that the train would go back and forth and to and fro before laying another piece of flex. Basically, that's going to let me know where my problem was if I had a problem. And here's a picture of the right-hand turnout, the number 6. I'm just showing you the piece of graphite that I've used. I've been using that for a year, y'all. I use that on my track. It is a And as I mentioned earlier, the importance of me doing this Helix in a modular capacity, this is why right here, y'all. I need to work on the 5th level again, okay? I need to do some work over there. All right, so I'm picking it up and I'm spinning it so I can get that work area right up against me, very accessible, very comfortable, no reach. It just keeps things simple. I'm not perfect at laying track by any stretch of the imagination. I'm fairly new to doing that. And so if I do some little things, that helps me be successful. Little things being taking my time, checking my work by running the train back and forth on the area prior to laying another track, making sure that none of the cars or locos hit the beams that I've set, making sure I don't have glue problems, making sure my solder was good and the train's not bumping around going over it. And again, accessibility like this, being able to get to it, not in an awkward capacity, really, really helped. I'm so glad that I opted to do this project outside of the layout. I didn't opt to do it outside of the layout for that purpose. I wanted to keep running trains, and that was a blessing in disguise that I did it over here, because I wouldn't have been successful. Got a lot of hints and tips. One of the biggest tips that I got, actually, I got to do a shout out to Schuylkill River Valley. John was the one who actually, I might have thought of it at some point, but John encouraged me to run power to it over here so I could test it, which I hadn't thought of. He might have done that in a live stream, I think. We had a live stream the other day where I pulled pulled the old Helix out. And so, looking good, y'all. I'm going to tell you, I'm very pleased. It came out per the plan so far. Now, I have not installed it yet, but it came out per the plan so far. And so what I did was, I'm just showing you the end result of my test, running the cars one at a time up there to make sure we're all good. Getting ready to show you my full train, all the cars I got in stock, in inventory that are runnable on this track, going back and forth. I look forward to giving you an episode next week where we do a very detailed description. I'm actually collaborating with somebody next week on the video, giving specific descriptions for the radii, grade, the math that went into it, the products that were used exactly on this build, the cost of those products, how much this build cost me in general, basically a breakdown. And what it's going to do is that video next week is going to turn into the introduction to the series, and then the week after that we're going to have the installation video. Where I put it in and test it and run it. And I'm going to tell you, at this point, up to installation, we're all good. It's going to be a matter now of me getting this bad boy set in the layout, getting it connected to the Pico turnout on the bottom number 1 level, and getting it connected on the 3rd level to the downhill grade that's going to be coming back down towards the Denver area to my other little mini Helix down there, and where it'll go through the passing and terminus after that. And I look forward to bringing that to y'all. I want to thank y'all for watching with me so far. I'm happy. One more thing from you. If you haven't already, I need you to click right here, or click here, or here, or here, anywhere to stick around. Just stick around.